Hi everybody, today I'm talking about are raw veggies bad for digestion? So salads, raw spinach, raw veggies in general, are they bad for your digestion? So they are a lot harder to digest than cooked veggies. The reason is cooking pre-digests and breaks down the veggies. So you can probably tell when you eat a cooked veggie, it turns to mush a lot sooner in your mouth. So chewing is one of the very first aspects of digestion. Other ones involve smelling the food because that actually triggers salivation, and saliva helps break down food too. But chewing is, the next step, one of the very first things you do. And the more thoroughly that food is broken down in your mouth, the easier time your stomach will have digesting it, and the easier time everything else will go. You'll have less waste. You'll be less prone to getting all backed up with a bunch of waste and having constipation. You'll be able to extract nutrients out of your food better because it was fully broken down. You won't waste as many nutrients, and you won't be as likely to have nutrient deficiencies. So it really cascades. The beginning matters a lot. And if you're starting with food that's easier to chew down and has already been kind of pre-digested in that sense because it's been cooked and it's been broken down, then you're going to have a lot easier time digesting it. Also, warmth in general is always going to be easier on your digestive system. So warm beverages are good, warm food is good, and very cold things like ice cream is a little bit harder to digest, or like iced beverages, things like that are harder on your digestive system. So just by cooking it and eating it warm, it's going to be a lot easier as well. Tough fibrous veggies, so think like broccoli, are a huge no-no when it comes to eating it raw. It's just gonna be really, really difficult to digest. So it's just not really gonna do you any favors. It can actually cause issues down the road, because if you're not breaking your food down thoroughly, like I said, you actually can't get all the nutrients out of it. Nutrients travel from your GI tract into your bloodstream through these little channels in your gut lining. I know I talk about this all the time, but they have to be broken down into the smallest units. So like carbs have to be broken down into glucose, protein has to be broken down to amino acids, fats have to be like fatty acids to be able to enter those little channels and enter your body. And vitamins and minerals have to be alone. A lot of plants have things like phytic acid and anti-nutrients that bind to these nutrients, and cooking can help to break that down a little bit and release the nutrients from like the bind of phytic acid, or oxalates is another one when it comes to leafy greens. So it helps release the bind of the oxalate on these nutrients. Usually it's one with 2+ charge like magnesium, let's see, what else? Potassium, things like that. But anyway, calcium is another one. Anyway, so cooking, you're going to get more vitamins and minerals like separated from everything else and being able to absorb them. So you'll get more nutrients. Now, note that veggies aren't your largest source of nutrients, but some of them can pack a little punch in there. Not like meat can, but it still gives you some, so you might as well get them. And if you have a lot of excess waste, so if you have like way too many fibrous veggies and you have a lot of fiber, if your gut microbiome is off, if you have dysbiosis, that fiber is going to feed all those microbes in there. And the ones that are off and overgrown are going to produce a lot of gas. So you're going to feel real gassy and real bloated from this excess fiber and your microbiome being off. This can actually lead to constipation or diarrhea too, because the microbes that are off produce gases. Sometimes they draw fluid towards your colon, sometimes they draw fluid away. If it's towards, you get diarrhea. If it's away, you get constipation. If you have a mixed match of microbes, you can actually get alternating. And another problem is if you're eating this food, but you're not breaking it down enough to absorb all these nutrients out of it, you just have a lot of waste. And if you're already constipated and you add more and more waste to your stools, it's just going to back you up further and it's going to feel horrible. That's exactly what happened to me when I had my really bad gut issues. I was vegetarian and I was even vegan for a short time of that, or not short, a year and 10 months. But anyway, I ate so much fiber and so much plants, just tons of fruit, veggies, a pretty good amount of grains and nuts too, and legumes and beans and hummus and all that stuff. And I was so backed up. I would have like 2, maybe 3, if I was lucky, bowel movements a week. I felt bloated and gassy and just like rocks in my stomach. Not a good feeling. So tons of raw veggies can add to that, or raw veggies in general can just add to that difficult to digest, producing more gases, backing you up further. Excess fiber and just plant matter can really scrape at your gut lining sometimes. So if you have a healthy gut lining, it's probably not going to make much of a dent, and you're probably going to be able to recover from that very quickly. But if you have something like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, and you have like a damaged gut lining, any extra scrapes from fiber and plants are going to be felt. It's kind of like when you get a little scrape and then you accidentally like hit it against something, or something that'll happen to me is I'll accidentally like hit my nail like against the scrape, and oh, it hurts so bad. But if I do that right now, like it doesn't hurt because there's not a scrape there. So having scrapes in your gut lining, which is what you have if you have ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, is going to make it very sensitive. So this extra fiber from raw veggies is going to be really hard to digest, and you're going to be, or I keep saying hard to digest, it's going to be hard on your gut lining, and cooked veggies would be a much, much better option for you there. So the next thing to get into is some veggies are actually fruits, and fruits are very, very low in anti-nutrients if they have any at all. So they're a lot easier to digest than like fibrous veggies are. The reason for this is because the plants actually want you to eat the fruit. To eat the fruit, spit out the seed, or eat the whole fruit and eliminate the seed in a nice pile of manure for their species to continue to grow. So they want you to eat the fruit, so there's not really any anti-nutrients in there to discourage you from eating it. Plants will put a lot of anti-nutrients in the seeds, and they'll put some in the like stalk and leaves too to discourage you from eating it, because if you eat more, you'll start to feel bad. It's the same thing with animals if they're eating plants as well. So anyway, the fruit is a lot easier to digest. You know, you don't need to be cooking your peaches or apples. You can, it's pretty good. But anyway, you don't have to be cooking your peaches and apples and bananas and things like that. You can eat them raw, and that's just fine. Okay, so let's get into which veggies are actually fruits. So it's going to be things with a seed. So it's going to be like bell peppers, avocado, tomatoes, squashes, zucchini, cucumbers, things like that have the seeds in them. So those are okay. Well, okay, I wouldn't really eat yellow squash or zucchini raw. That would be kind of funny. But if you're gonna have like tomatoes or cucumbers or things like that, or avocado in a salad, that's totally fine. I think lettuce is fine because salads are really nice. I don't think lettuce is that hard to digest, but you do want to stay away from raw dark leafy greens, so things like spinach, chard or kale or things like that. Yeah, you don't want like a spinach or kale salad because there's a lot of oxalates in there, which can cause a lot of issues, mostly with pain, like fibromyalgia and stuff like that. But that's a whole nother topic, but oxalates can become a problem there. So you can probably see there's like different levels to which veggies really need to be cooked and which veggies are okay to have raw. And then the overall scale matters too. You know, you don't want to be having like raw and more raw plants all the time, and these salads full of like raw broccoli and beans and, you know, seeds, and then a bunch of other raw veggies in there. Like, that's not gonna be easy to digest. You're gonna get pretty gassy and not feel so good after that. But you know, a little bit here and there isn't the biggest deal in the world. Raw carrots, for example, are actually really good at binding to xenoestrogens. So that's things like plastic and whatnot, microplastics that you get exposed to and then have in your body. So it's really good for your hormones to have raw carrots. So that is one of those little side random ones. And then there's a few other kind of random ones like that, like cruciferous veggies. So like cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, things like that are really high in a molecule that's called goitrogens, and those are not good for your thyroid. So cooking and fermenting will help to eliminate the goitrogens and make it just fine. But you know, those are not going to be a good option, especially if you have thyroid issues. And I was talking about oxalates earlier, so that's really high in those dark leafy greens, is not going to be a good option. Yeah, so there are some little specifics, but overall, most of the time you want to cook or ferment fermenting will also break down the veggies and kind of pre-digest them, and it'll give you a lot of good microbes that are really healthy for you, a lot of probiotics in there. So fermenting is great too, but you want to cook or ferment the majority of your veggies, and the ones that are technically fruits like tomatoes and cucumbers and avocado, if you want to have those raw, that's totally fine. And if you want some lettuce from a salad here and there, that's fine. If you want a raw carrot here and there, it's not a big deal, but just avoid having a lot of raw veggies because it's a lot harder to digest and it won't feel as good in your tummy. It'll just kind of stall everything up a bit and it just won't work as efficiently. And I actually got the idea for this video from a comment. One of you asked this question in the comments and I thought it was a really great question, so I decided to make a whole video on it. So if you have any questions, please leave them down below in the comments, or if you have any suggestions for future videos that you'd like to see, I would love to hear them. So yeah, feel free to leave those down below. I always love reading your comments. And if you want to learn more about a gut healing diet and what you should eat to support your gut health, I will leave a playlist on the screen in just a second that goes over, there's just a lot of videos in there that talk about healing your gut and how to do that diet wise. The very first one is about a Weston A. Price or ancestral style diet, and that's one of my favorite ones because it really breaks down exactly what you should be eating without being too overwhelming and just focusing on the basics and where to start. So if you want to check that out, I'll put it on the screen in a second. Thank you so much for watching.